Well, welcome everyone to our last session of the day for our EdTech Unleashed conference. With us right now, we've got Trevor Smith from Southwestern High School in Pulaski County. He's with our America's Promise 250 grant, and he's going to teach us how to gamify the government.
Well,
Uh,
hopefully that's the intention anyway.
that's
Yeah, so
awesome.
as Jennifer said, I'm Trevor Smith. I teach at Southwestern High School in Pulaski County. I've been teaching there for about 5 years now. I've not always taught government, but I've always been in social studies, and so I've used iCivics ever since I started teaching because I think you can use it more than just in a civics class. You can use it history, economics, so on and so forth. So. Really, the gist, I know the title is Gamifying the Government, but really I'm just going to show you a bunch of different ways that you can use iCivics because I use it more than just for the games, but they have a ton of different games that you can play. Because I know for my personal experiences when I was in school and also for my students, um, if you can do anything other than take notes, that's what they want to do. So whenever you get the opportunity to play a game, they absolutely hop on that and they love every bit of it. So just a few things before I get started with the actual PowerPoint here. Rather than like putting it into presentation mode, because I'm going to be going back and forth between the presentation and iCivic's website just to prevent any whiplash. So if it bothers you that you can see the bottom here, I apologize. It'll just be easier that way. So, but we'll go ahead and get started here. So basically, the objective is I want to highlight a few things that are important to iCivics, specifically the main features that it has. I would argue that the main feature actually isn't the games. It's actually the curriculum that it provides. I've used several of the lesson plans, several of the assignments that it has on there as well as the games. But the most fun part, especially for the students, is the games. And in all reality, especially in the time period we're living in with, government and civics, anything to make it fun is is and should be the goal, I think, personally. So we're going to kind of look at a bunch of the different resources, the games, the curriculum, lesson plans, and just some of the ways that I've implemented it. And maybe if some of you all have used it, maybe some of the ways that you all have implemented it as well. I also think, if I'm not mistaken, so I'm in American Promise 250. If anybody else is, I'm not sure. But I think in the next week or two, there's actually somebody from iCivics that's supposed to come and talk to us. So I'm actually excited for that because there's all kinds of stuff on this website that I still don't even know or use. And so hopefully they can provide some insight for that. But just a little background here before we get into the actual website. I think, and this is really the main reason I wanted to talk about this, is why even bother with iCivics, right? I know that as a lot of social studies teachers in here, some of you may not be social studies teachers, but especially in now 2026, we're 250 years into our country. Um, I think it's more important than ever to talk about civics, um, mainly because the vast majority of the people who live in our country just really don't know about it, right? We've been a country for 250 years at this point, by July 4th, and a good portion still don't really know how our government fully operates. So I have some statistics here for you. So why civics education matters. At the high school level across the country, this number may be slightly different as of the last election here, but 13 states do not have civics course requirements, and only 7 states require a full year of a civics or government class at the high school level. Um, I think the fact that not all 50 states require a civics course is kind of wild to me, to be honest. I know that a lot of schools will maybe kind of plug civics into kind of this all-in-one social studies class. But our government is really so complex that I think it definitely deserves its own class for sure. Not only that, but 1 in 6 adults are unable to name a branch of the government. That's crazy. So I don't know about you all, but I'm on social media a lot. I watch a lot of TikTok. This will, hopefully this doesn't make anybody feel too old. I'm 26, so I'm still super, I consider myself to be super up to date with a lot of the stuff that goes on social media. And I'll see these videos of people asking random strangers in the street just generic civics questions, and these people don't know the answers to them. And I just think it's crazy. And so the statistics here show that 1 in 6 can't name a branch of the government, and 1 in 20 adults, only 1 in 20 adults could name the 5 rights that we have protected in the First Amendment. Uh, that's also scary because if you don't know your rights, how do you expect to, have your rights protected, right? If you don't know them. And then last but not least, a survey conducted prior to COVID-19. So you could probably imagine after the fact, maybe got worse before COVID-19, estimated that 1 in 3 Americans could pass the United States citizenship test. Um, so this is actually super relevant to me because before Christmas break, for the first semester, I gave my AP Government class the United States citizenship test because my school requires that they take that and they pass it before we allow graduation. And that's how the state requirement used to be, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. Um, but I tell my students, I'm like, listen, folks, 1 in 3 Americans can pass the U.S. citizenship test. So if you can pass it in this class, you're better than 2 out of the 3 Americans in the country, right? As far as civics knowledge. But that's still pretty concerning, right? So with the state of Kentucky in particular, the law has actually kind of changed regarding civics in Kentucky. It has been for the longest time to some extent required, either taking the citizenship test or at least having a civics course of some sort. But they kind of changed it recently here. So KRS 158 says beginning with the entering ninth grade class, so the ninth grade class of this school year, they have to do one of two things. Okay. They either have to have 1/2 of the credit of a course in civics literacy. Okay, so that includes instruction in the areas required in the statute, or or they can take the 100 question citizenship test, which actually the federal government has changed recently this year to add additional questions. So it's actually more than 100 questions now. I think it's 128 questions, but they can either take the half credit course or take the test and pass it. Um, and in order to be considered passing, I think it's a 70%. 70%. This past year was a 60%. I think they're upping the score to 70% now. Um, so I would argue, I'm not going to like talk government or politics here. I'm just going to generic civics. I think it should be a full year of civics, and I think you should have to pass the test. Just because you're taking the class, you might as well take the test and you should be able to pass it anyway. Or at least I think so. So we'll jump into the actual website and how I think it can kind of address those issues that I think not only we're seeing in the classroom, because some of you all may see some of this stuff, or maybe there's somebody that you know out, in the general public that maybe couldn't pass the citizenship test. Maybe you could put them on iCivics. It's not just for kids. So iCivics was founded actually by former Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor in 2009. She saw the need for individuals in our country, students primarily, to receive a good civic education, to prepare themselves once they got out of school to be educated voters, educated democratic citizens. And so she kind of took this up, and it's been around ever since. So iCivics resources, the good thing is, and I don't know kind of the demographic here as far as teachers go, um, but it covers elementary, middle, and high school. So it has all levels. We're going to look at the lesson plans. So it's got lesson plans for all three sections there. It's got games for all three, all kinds of stuff. So even if you feel like, oh, because I'm a high school teacher, it's definitely for everybody. And it's the perfect tool to keep the kids engaged, especially with the games, because they definitely love the games. So as I've mentioned here, there are a lot of different features and resources that iCivics has. So this is kind of where I'm going to shift gears to actually going to the website. In the comments, Jennifer and I have posted a link to iCivics. So if you just want to click that link and follow along, you're more than welcome to do that. So I'm on the main page here. I've already signed in, but if you haven't, created an account or need to sign in, if you hit teach, it'll walk you through the steps of. I just sign in through Google. It automatically connects to my Google. I don't have to create an account or anything like that. So I hit teach, I sign in, and then this is going to be the page that it takes me to. And so right off of the rip, it shows me that I have an elementary section, a middle school section, and a high school section. And then over here, the games and the videos, if students log in, right? But we're just going to start out because, for some of you, it may be the first time you've been on here. If not, we're just going to go to up here where it says how to use iCivics and then go to scope and sequence. And because I'm a high school teacher, I'm just going to go with that. So I apologize for my middle school and elementary folks. But right here where it says high school scope and sequence PDF, hopefully, can everybody see that? All right, cool. It may be a little small. But this kind of gives you the breakdown of what you're going to see in the full, this is the full shebang of the high school curriculum that it provides. And so you can see all of the products that it has, games, extension packs for the games. So one of the cool things about this is gradually they'll add more to these games, add additional features to these games. So, maybe last year you played one of these games and then they've added an extension pack to it. And so the next year you can add that to what you're talking about, what you're showing. It's got lesson plans. The lesson plans, it says here, 1 to 2 class periods. So I've used a couple of the lesson plans. I'm actually going to be using one next week when we start to talk about the civil rights movement. But also for these little mini lessons, I do a thing in my class, and it's called a checklist. And so on one side of the document, I pass out a document. On one side, it's notes. So we do kind of a guided note section together. And on the right side, that's when it's independent work or group work. So now we shift gears to the students are going to work on something. Sometimes I'll put a mini lesson because maybe I didn't really have time to go over a full thing, or maybe I want to hit a specific topic a little bit more, but on their own, right? And so I'll put a mini lesson in there. And it's a 2-page reading or some activity that goes along with maybe what we just talked about. I've used the web quests a lot. I'm a huge fan of web quests. Um, so I'll kind of show you an example of one of those here in a bit. I have not used the DB quest, but um, if you are an AP teacher, dual credit teacher at the high school level, and you maybe, for example, U.S. history, right? One of my colleagues, me and him work really closely together because I know that my students who are sophomores in AP government are going to go to him next year for dual credit or AP U.S. history. And so we kind of collaborate a little bit on maybe some of the things that I need to talk about to prepare them for when they get to U.S. history. And I know in U.S. history, there's a lot of document-based questions. The DB Quest is interactive documents. So you look at the documents, it'll ask questions. You can interact with the documents, all that stuff. I don't necessarily use those a whole lot. It's actually a little bit of a newer thing. It's been around for a little bit, but they're constantly updating this because they're wanting to utilize it a little bit more. There are videos and there are simulations. So if you really like to get, your whole class engaged, doing an interactive module of some sort, the simulations are good for that. So like a fictional, Supreme Court case, which I have done something similar to that as well. And then if we scroll down here, this is the cool part. Okay, so this is almost kind of to some extent like a curriculum guide or a curriculum map. Okay, and the cool thing here, I wish that they would like make it blue so that you knew that you could click these things, but you can actually click the resources and it'll take you exactly to where you need to go. Um, so for example, I'm just going to jump down here to one that I did recently. Let me find it. Right here. So who represents me? Um, Before we went on Christmas break in my AP class, we were talking about the legislative branch, and I wanted to also teach them about some of their representatives and how the legislative system operates. And so I gave them this web quest. And so if I click who represents me, it's going to take me straight to that web quest, right? Um, And there's also ways to assign it to Google Classroom. So you can also click that, but it'll give you an overview. It'll also give you, if there are any materials, it'll give you the PDFs. So in a lot of the lesson plans, it'll have a teacher lesson plan. It'll have the student handouts if there are any. A lot of times too, it can also provide Spanish versions. So if you have English second language learners, it'll provide that stuff too. So that's pretty cool. But let me kind of show you here real quick. So this is something that I use in class. It's a web quest. Let me go to my classes here and show you an example of that. Go to class. It's right here. This was it was part of one of my checklists that I did. So we'll go to the details here. And then we'll just, use an example here. So this is if I were to grade it, right? I pull up the thing. This is not what the students would see. They would actually see like an actual web quest. It'll provide the links. It'll take them where they need to go, all that stuff. But I can see their responses. I can see the questions that it asks, so that way I can grade it. And this is what they would access from Google Classroom. I'd post the link. It'd take them straight here. They would see the document or the web quest or whatever it is, and then they would answer the questions. And so I think it's also cool because it puts everything right here. I can look over it, grade it if I need to, whatever I need to do. And it shows you how much progress they made, if they stopped in the middle, and all of that. So we'll go back to this real quick, the PowerPoint here. So I want to go through each thing individually. First thing that I want to do is I want to go through some of the games because that's why I think a lot of people are here because they are the most fun aspect of it. So we'll go to play and learn. That's what you always click if you want to go to the games. Um, if you want to, you can just scroll through here. I'll just do like a quick scroll. You can see just how many different games that they have. It also tells you the grade level that it recommends that you play that game at. But there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can see down here just how many pages of games that they have. But let's look at this one right here. So People's Pie, this is one of my personal favorites. I like to do this. I see a question here. So this can be used in AP Gov. Yes, I use this in AP Gov, not daily, but pretty regularly. I'll show you actually one of the lesson plans that I used. Um, because I would say this, they don't specify, I'll say this, they don't specify if something's college level or not. It's just generic, like this is what you'd be covering in a civics class anyway. Um, and so I just take advantage of that, right? Because they're going to be learning it. Might as well use the resources that are already out there. But this is a game that I use in my class that I actually play as a full class. I make the class the legislative branch. They have to be Congress in determining the spending that is going to be devoted to certain projects or things of that nature. So when we're talking about discretionary and mandatory spending within our government, we'll go and we'll play the people's pie here. So I'll kind of show you what this looks like. We'll do a full, can everybody see the full screen of it? Okay, cool. So we'll just hit new game. So it'll also give all the instructions at the very beginning. It'll do walkthroughs. It'll explain everything, especially if you want your students to play it on their own. It has where you can, it'll say the stuff out loud. Also, the cool thing here too is so with these blue words, it allows them to see what the definition of that word is because a lot of times these are the vocab words that we're having to teach our kids anyway. And so if they are curious on what that is, especially if you're having them play it on their own, or you could kind of make two assignments out of this, play this game, and while you're playing the game, maybe write down some vocab and definitions, right? So you click it and it'll tell you what the definition is. So I think that that's pretty cool. But it'll tell you what's going on, confirm here. Down here, it kind of explains what's happening here. Okay. Um, just for the sake of time, I'm going to kind of skip some of this stuff because I've played this a little bit. So at the very beginning, before you can even start for this game. And this is why I like it, because it really breaks down kind of the main ways that our government receives revenue. Okay. So you got the corporate tax, payroll tax, income tax, and then you also have down here too, and I like to kind of talk about this as far as politics goes in our government with retirement age. I like to talk a little bit about Social Security and how our politicians really don't like to touch Social Security because that's kind of the political murder, if you will, or if you touch Social Security. So I have my class as a whole, but based off of um, how the legislative branch work, we would vote. All right. Do we want to have high corporate tax? Do we want to have high payroll tax, high income tax? And we vote. Just raise the hands, and then I make the selection, right? And you can see as I change the different settings, the public approval down here at the bottom changes. Over here, the amount of money that we start with changes, all this type of stuff. And so at each point, I stop, I explain how each thing matters in regards to how our legislative branch operates, how they allocate funding, all that sort of thing. But at the very beginning, I explain what is the goal. The goal is to not go into debt and have high public approval. Two things that our government are terrible at doing, right? And I also explain that. But we can try to do that. So we'll just go into we'll do medium of everything here. We'll set the public approval to or the retirement age of 65. Obviously, the people are not happy. All right, the people are not happy. The goal is to make them happy while also not spending too much money. So it tells us all the money that we're starting with, right? And so we'll go into it. Tells us how much reserve funding, Social Security, Medicare, discretionary funding. And so this is where the fun starts. So it gives you all these different categories where our government would be spending money. Some of the stuff that's going to be in here is going to be stuff that our government probably actually would spend money on. Some of the things in here, and I really like this game because some of these things are really funny. And then we have to vote as a class on are we going to spend money on that or are we not? So let's go to education because we're all educators. So it's going to give us three options here, right? So we need to choose if we need to fund or cut these three things. And this is where I'll have my classes vote on the specific stuff. and we'll read. I'll give a quick summary of what the thing we're funding or not funding is, and then how much it's going to cost, because that goes into our discretionary budget here. Because again, the goal is we want to have a surplus, not a deficit. Um, so puppy schools, all right. Dogs help police and people with disabilities, but there's so much more they can do. Fund this program to develop puppy schools to train dogs in jobs like food delivery, babysitting, and mail service. And then this is where my students are like, babysitting and mail service and do food delivery for dogs. Should we spend $14 billion on that? And then you'll obviously have the funny kid in the back. Oh, yeah, I think we should spend money on that. I think we should spend money on that. But then we have the class vote, and then we would say either fund or cut it, right? So you'd cut. Um, Innovative for progress. This proposal provides money for states and school districts to think of creative ways to meet local educational needs, right? Improve outcomes for all students. Well, that sounds like a pretty good thing, but we also do have to take into consideration how much money it is. And that's one of the things that I have to explain to my students that I stop and I say, hey, this sounds good, right? But our government, even though something may sound good, also has to weigh the cost of that thing. Because if our government is already severely in debt, they have to realize that maybe the money might be important somewhere else. Now, I'm not saying obviously for this it isn't, right? But that's where I would take the time to explain, well, right now, maybe our government's wanting to spend more money on the military. So maybe they might cut funding to education or, vice versa, right? So we'll fund this program to increase the number of school counselors, nurses, social workers, and other health professionals, and then we'll fund that. And then notice this public approval. Okay, so right now we've chosen to spend $3.1 billion dollars. If we approve, let's see if anything happens. Oh, the public approval went up a little bit, right? And it also tells us right here with these little smiley faces that if we funded it and the people approved, they are smiling. If we cut it and the people approved, they're smiling. If we cut it and the people are not happy, we'll eventually see a frowny face. And then we can also see this public approval down here go down. And so you go through all these different sections here, um, and it gives you 3 years worth of time to do this, to kind of get that public approval all the way up at the beginning or all the way up to the green, while also maintaining a surplus of discretionary funds. And at the very end, it's going to give the students a breakdown of how well they did. All right. Because obviously, if their public approval is low and they spent a lot of money, then they probably didn't do the greatest, right? So that's just kind of a little bit of an example of that game. This one's probably my favorite game, I'd say. Let's go to another one that I like. You see if I just type it in here. All right. So, one of the things that my students hate the most is the amendments, mainly because they have to remember the amendments, especially for their AP exam. And so I have to try and find a way rather than just say, here's the First Amendment, here's the Second Amendment, here's the Third Amendment. Let's actually do something fun in regards to the amendments. And so I think that this is a perfect game for not all of the amendments, but at least a good portion of them, and it's do I have a right? And so in this game, you open it up here. I don't know what this red line on my screen is. Uh-oh. There we go. So the point of this game is you are opening up a law firm, and your objective is to help people with their rights. They're going to court over some sort of issue, and so you can either choose the full edition, which has the vast majority of the amendments that would have to do with individual liberties and rights, and then over here you have the Bill of Rights edition. At the very beginning of when we start my class, we do the Bill of Rights edition because that's what we mainly focus on. And then as the course goes on, we start to add additional amendments. And so we do the full thing. They get to customize their little character here. We're not going to go through all of that, but we'll just hit continue, type your name, Trevor Smith. And then it's going to give you an option of two different um, attorneys to kind of start your law firm with. And it's going to tell you the amendment or the, right that they kind of specialize in. And that will help you initially with the game. We'll just go with the First Amendment here real quick. Again, there's sound to this, and it explains everything just like the other game does. All right. So obviously, would you like me to show you how to do things around here? If you've never played the game, this is where they would say, yes, teach me. Or for you, if you're trying to be able to explain it to your students, you do the same thing. I know how it works though, so I'll kind of show you. So it'll give you kind of levels, I guess you'd say. So you're gonna have somebody that's gonna walk in, you're gonna go up to them, and they're gonna tell you what their situation is. I posted pictures of my artwork on a website. The government said it didn't like my artwork and shut down my site. Do I have the right to display my art? Well, this is where the kids would determine does this person have a right or do they not? Right? We're gonna say you have a right. And luckily, we chose the First Amendment here. So we can say we can help with that, right? So we'll take the person over to the First Amendment lawyer here, and then we'll select the right and match. And then they'll talk and they'll deliberate and all that stuff. And then over here, whenever they're done talking, the little arrow's going to pop up. You go over there, you send them to trial. And then eventually it's going to come back and tell you if you won or if you lost. Now, if you put a person who's having an issue with maybe a lawyer who can't properly represent them, or you selected a person who doesn't actually have a right, they'll go to court and they'll lose. You just see that person that just walked out too. If they've waited for a long time and you don't go over to them, they'll just leave. So that's one thing. And then over the course of time, you get prestige. You can add, buy lawyers, put advertising out, build up this law firm, so on and so forth. So also too, when you win the cases, your lawyer can add additional things that they're experts in, so that way uh, that can help people. So let's run an ad here. Let's keep it budget friendly. We'll place the ad out there. It spent 40 of our prestige, and I'm done upgrading. Start of day two. We'll see who comes in. Someone stole a statue from the front of City Hall. 5 sheriff deputies dragged me to a secret room and threatened me until I confessed. Do I have a right to stop them from using my confession? Technically, this person does have a right, right? I don't have a person who would be able to represent them, but let's just see what happens if I send them over to the First Amendment lawyer here. Uh, we'll just see what happens. And then we can also go to this person. Ban political rallies because sometimes leave a mess behind for others. Do I have a right? I'll say yes, please wait. And so that will keep them there a little longer so that way your students can come back to them later. We'll send these people to trial here and see what happens. Let's go over to this guy, Fort. Uh, do I have a constitutional right to build a fort? Probably not. So let's see. Bad news. We lost the case. I focus on the freedom of expression. So see, I put the person with somebody who couldn't really represent them very well. Even though that person did have a right, I didn't have the lawyer, the attorney that could properly represent that person. So unfortunately, we lost that case. So I think it does a really good job of explaining what the amendments are, explaining why the person does have a right or why they don't have a right, explaining why maybe in that situation why it was a Fifth Amendment issue instead of a First Amendment issue. So I think my kids actually really like this one because they feel like they're actually doing something. They feel like they actually feel like they're representing these people. There's been a few times where my students will say, "No, you don't have a right. Get out of here. Don't fill up my law firm. Like, be for real, whatever." So this game also pretty fun. So let's go back here to the slides here.
So
Kind
Trevor,
of covered this.
did they play this individually on their own?
Yeah, so I have them play this one on their own.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a little easier to play on your own. Now you could probably do it as a group thing, I guess, or maybe like in small groups. But yeah, this one's more of a kind of an individual thing.
Thanks.
So now we'll look at the lesson plans here. So we'll go back to the scope and sequence, go to that PDF here. And it tells you too what, because you got again the product types, and it tells you over here on the right what the product type is. So I think that is super user friendly. So we'll just find one. Actually, I'll go to the lesson plan that I'm planning on using here soon. Um, where did it go? Did I already pass it? It's further down. Okay, I've just magically lost it. So we're just gonna pick a random one. Right here, lesson plan. So lesson plan McCulloch versus Maryland. It'll take you straight there. And again, you always have the option to assign it through Google Classroom. It lets you connect your Google Classroom automatically to iCivics. So it's just kind of that SIS transfer thing. So right here, it's going to give me all the documents and materials that I need. It has the student document that I'd pass out to the students. It has the teacher guide. So sometimes they're kind of shorter, and they don't really give you a whole lot of stuff because sometimes the stuff's pretty self-explanatory, but it tells you everything that's in this lesson plan, gives you step by step how their plan, how they expect it to kind of be carried out. Um, you know, so this one's kind of a two-pager here. And if we go back, you've got the student handout. And what I like to do, just, because sometimes some of these are a little longer, so this one's 5 pages, right? It'll give them a reading of what is being discussed. So you can teach the topic, right? And that's normally what I'll do. I'll have my own PowerPoints. I'll teach McCulloch versus Maryland, and then I'll give them this as supplemental material. I'll have them read the 1 to 2 pages of whatever it is, and then this is where they'll have kind of like maybe some questions that they might answer in regard to the reading. So kind of down here as well, crossword puzzle, matching, uh, kind of fill in the blank type stuff here. And then it also gives you an answer key, right? So minimal work. It's got it all here for you, shows you what the answers are. So that way you can just go through, quickly grade the information, and get it situated. Um, let's go back. Let me close some of these tabs here. Scope and sequence. I've not really used many of the videos before either. Here, let me give you a look at the DB quest because I know some of you may be interested in using the document-based questions here. So again, it gives you the overview, gives you the PDF if you need the PDF. If you want to launch the web quest here, we'll hit new session. Do guided mode, especially because I don't know about you, but I hate explaining something and right after you get done explaining it, Mr. Smith, what are we supposed to be doing? Well, hit the guided mode and it'll tell you. So you can just click whoever you want to assist you, right? Let's get started. Let's look at the DBQ, DB quest. Going to ask a big question, research big answers. Big question of the day: how did Alexander Hamilton convince President Washington to support the creation of the National Bank? And then it gives you a little information. Continue, continue. Now there's these three documents, right? So we'll click the first one here. Perfect. Now we can jump and see what this source has to offer. I'll pop up at the bottom of the screen to help out with tips and instructions. So here's the background, gives them a background. And here's the document on the left-hand side. And just like the rest of all the other products that it has on here, it gives you the blue worded things with the definition. So that way, a student who maybe doesn't know what the word means, they can go and look at the glossary of terms. So we'll close that. Very first thing, what type of source is this? Okay, so source analysis. First and foremost, it'll analyze it. You write, you answer questions, all sorts of stuff. Like I said, I've not really used these. I've just skimmed through them on my own just to kind of see what they are in case I've ever wanted to use them. Um, so they could click whatever. We'll just click whatever and just go through this. How favorable they would up at the top, it gives them kind of the background, right? We'll just click supportive because it's Hamilton wanting a national bank, right? Dig in and analyze the document. So now it's going to ask us questions. Why did Hamilton submit this report? Well, it'll highlight specific things to maybe give us that information. So this is good for reading primary source material, documents, analyzing, answering questions. I told myself my New Year's resolution was to have my students read and write more. And so I probably will be utilizing this a little bit more. I've already been utilizing the lesson plans with the reading material pretty much the first week back that we were here this last week, they read something almost every day. I had just a one pager, two pager, answer questions, one pager, two pager, answer questions after I went through and started talking about stuff. So it's got all kinds of stuff here. It also, you know, search your state standards. So if maybe you have some administrators that are super adamant about aligning the stuff to the standards, you can go here and look at that. And then there's also other related sources. So maybe if you want to add a mini lesson with it, or here's another DB quest that goes with it, or another lesson plan that kind of scaffolds, goes along with the subject. All right.
You got
So
about
iCivics
three
has
minutes. You got three
Okay, yeah,
minutes.
I'm
Yeah,
I'm almost done. So it
you're
has a
good.
lot of different materials and a lot of different resources.
That's
So like
awesome.
I've said, I've used the lesson plans just for if maybe I want to switch it up. Maybe I don't want to do the standard notes one day. The games are always a good thing. I try to play a game a week. I want my kids to have a day where it's super low stakes. They don't feel like it's just another day of the grueling, back-breaking, hand cramping notes. So I try to plug in a game, whether that be Book It or Kahoot or whatever it is, or just the good old faithful iCivics. And then last but not least, um, you know, if you ever need subplans, this is a perfect opportunity to just have everything pre-made, posted on Google Classroom, left for your students with, and the website does all the directions and instruction. So you don't have to really even rely on, you being there to get it done, right? So let's see. I have a question. Any ideas on how to use these better in a resource class? Those students have a tough time with it. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. I don't have an answer for that. I Since I teach AP, I don't really have a whole lot of student in regards to using this. I don't really have a whole lot of students in regards that maybe need like additional assistance, like IEPs, 504, something of that nature. So I don't really have a great answer for that. So I apologize.
You said
Um,
that you didn't really use that audio feature, but I'm wondering
yeah.
if the audio feature would. read the text
Let's go in
as
and
I just wondered that if that might be something that could help in a resource class as they still have access to that content.
so I'm looking at this DB Quest and it doesn't look like it has a microphone. So let's go to
Maybe
one of
some of the
the lesson
games,
plans
like
here.
the lawyer's office that you were
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
You don't have to. I was just thinking.
Right. Try to get this up in operation real quick.
That's fine. I just wondered if maybe that would be helpful or one way that you could utilize this in a resource class.
Can everybody hear that? Can you hear the
No,
music? No?
no.
Well, it's playing music right now. So it does have voice. It looks like you can change it language, English, Spanish. So you can turn the glossary on, off. Same thing for English, Spanish. Um, but yeah, as far as resource class, I'm sorry that I can't really help you there.
Okay, Taylor said that only some of them have audio options. Some of them are
Okay.
tied to Cami. I think it is a screen reader, but she might be
Okay.
misreading, remembering that. But before you all leave, I'm putting the evaluation in the chat just so you can grab that link and make sure that you complete that as soon as you possibly can. Trevor, golly, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
of
I don't
course.
know how many of you have used iCivics before, but this is a wonderful resource
Yes, yes.
for you to use in your social studies classrooms or if you teach a standalone civics class. Anyone have any questions for Trevor?
Yeah, and by no means am I an expert in this, but you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'll put I know that there's going to be um, information and everything, but if you need to email me about something or maybe some of the ways that I've used it, you're more than welcome to email me. I put my email in the
Awesome.
chat. So,
Do you have a Twitter handle? You all don't forget to tweet or post to X, that social media platform, to make sure that we're visible and seen, and that teachers across the state can see all the awesome things that you all are doing in your classrooms for kids.
yes, thank you all for your kind attention. Hopefully you got something out of it.
Yeah, thank you all so much. This concludes EdTech Unleashed for today. Thank you so much, Trevor. You did an awesome job presenting. You've got lots of positive comments in the chat. And we appreciate you all being here today. We hope that you can go out and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.